Everyone, and today's Friendship Day. So from yesterday night I've been receiving so many digital forms of roses, so I decided to throw some back to the audience. I put some on my shirt, I put some there. I said, let's celebrate Friendship Day. Anyway, topic for today is the long-term management of alcohol dependence, and though primarily my focus would be medical, but we would also touch upon some psychosocial issues as well. There are some psychosocial issues which are there's a separate lecture which our guest from Delhi will be doing, so I won't touch upon them. Currently, in the last few years, we've had a much better understanding of the neurobiology of alcohol dependence, in the sense that how withdrawal occurs, what are the various neurotransmitters involved, the long-term management, what does it involve, the biology in the long-term management, and even the psychopharmacology or the drug treatment long-term is now interestingly poised, because we have quite a few drugs that we use. Prior to the last 5 or 6 years, we had few drugs that we could use. Now we have quite a few that are being used. And there are a number of drug combinations also which, sort of are being used. And new molecules being researched. So it's interesting that we have some drugs coming up as far as long-term alcohol dependence goes. So far our pharmacological options have been naltrexone, disulfiram, acamprosate, topiramate, then mood stabilizers and some other drugs. So these are what I would probably focus on. To start with naltrexone, all of us know it's an opioid receptor antagonist, and more so it has been approved only as recently as 1994 by the US FDA. It basically reduces dopamine release from the dopamine reward pathway and the release of endogenous opioids. That is how it works. Also, it is very important in the management of alcohol dependence because it reduces craving in many alcohol dependent patients. And craving is one of the main reasons why patients relapse. They are unable to bear the craving, manage the craving. Apart from this, there are studies done on naltrexone, and it's not something which is not evidence-based. We have a large number of reviews, we have a large number of meta-analysis which have been done. Over 53 randomized trials which are there. We have 2 early trials which were done in 1992 by authors called O'Malley and Volpicelli, which was first published in the Archives of General Psychiatry, that put naltrexone on the map. And after that, naltrexone has been used in alcohol dependence. Usually it reduces the rates of drinking in around 30 to 60% of cases. Abstinence rates are around 25 to 30%. And there's even a recent Cochrane meta-analysis. Usually we prefer Cochrane analysis because we feel they are unbiased, they are non-pharma sponsored, and they give us a much clearer picture. In fact, the Cochrane website is available to all of us. So all you have to do, go there, search for data you want, and you could read those papers. Apart from that, naltrexone has been used at different doses. All of us know it comes as a 50 milligram tablet. There are different authors who suggest different methods. Some suggest you use it at 50 milligrams twice a day or 50 milligrams thrice a day. Some say you give a loading dose of 200 to 250 milligrams on the first day and then follow it up with 50 milligrams BD. Some people have an alternate day dosage, but nevertheless a regular dosage of 50 to 150 milligrams is what is there. Naltrexone is also one of the few drugs wherein brain imaging has shown us, particularly fMRI that involves blood imaging, that it reduces the blood flow to areas which are brain reward areas when a person sees alcohol, if he's on naltrexone. So it does work. Apart from that, it's one of the few drugs that has been extensively used in adolescents, because in an adolescent population that abuses alcohol, we are always worried what drugs to use. Also, in relapse prevention, we have a large number of studies. And more so nowadays, there are a lot of papers which are coming out where naltrexone is being either combined with acamprosate, or it's being combined with topiramate, or it's being combined with disulfiram. So naltrexone combinations are what are there. These are all 2013 papers which have come out. Why it is preferred? It has a favorable safety profile. There is no tolerance or abuse potential. More so, there are minor side effects noted. though it's easily resolved. We also have a black box warning for hepatotoxicity. In fact, some studies have mentioned that liver enzymes might in fact improve on naltrexone because it acts via some metabolic pathways in the liver, though no major hepatotoxicity cases have been reported. One thing which you all have to be a little aware of is that naltrexone, being an opioid drug, has some sexual side effects. So you may have patients who are substance abusers who may complain of that. Though usually we don't really ask these issues in substance abusers, but it's a pertinent one. Also, we don't have, one little drawback is we don't have any good method of measuring serum naltrexone to know, whether the levels are proper or not, though there are studies abroad that do that. Clinically, there are some barriers to the response to naltrexone, though it is widely used clinically. They found that there are different genetic endophenotypes that may respond differently to naltrexone. Particularly if you have the met-enkephalin gene or the mu-enkephalin gene, then you might probably respond differently. Also, if you have a family history of alcoholism and the age of onset is earlier, you may show a little better response to naltrexone. Even laboratory studies show that if you have elevated liver enzymes, these patients show better response to naltrexone. And some genotypes where you have opioid-related genes may show a better response. Naltrexone is the only drug apart from disulfiram in our alcohol psychopharmacology which is available as long-acting in two ways. One, you have an injectable, and the other you have degradable microspheres which contain 380 milligrams of naltrexone. This has been European FDA approved in 1996 and it is known to have less hepatotoxicity. The findings as far as the long-term management goes are in keeping with oral naltrexone. We don't have studies that show it's better. Most of the long-term studies show its efficacy lasts 1 to 3 months. And now we have few studies. All the studies done earlier on long-acting naltrexone was in opioid dependence. Now we have few studies that show long-acting naltrexone may probably work even in alcohol dependence. The implant is accepted more. An IV or an injectable drug every month is less accepted. Coming to our second drug, acamprosate. We have 3 trials of acamprosate way back in 2002-03 that led to its FDA approval. Somehow its efficacy, though on similar lines to naltrexone, we've not had a very good experience using it. They found that yes, there is a 30 to 50% increase in abstinence on non-drinking days, though its strongest effect is known to be in early detoxification. In fact, it's one of the few drugs that you can start in the alcohol withdrawal, on day 1. And the reason is it is neuroprotective, as we will see. And its efficacy in long-term studies alone has been demonstrated. The drug is called calcium acetyl homotaurinate and it's available as 333 milligram tablets. Now, there are some authorities that prescribe 1 tablet thrice a day. There are some authorities that use it in a dose of 1, 1 and 2 at night. There are some authorities that say you should use 2 tablets thrice a day. I think with Indian populations, a 1-1-2 dosage or even 1 tablet thrice a day works well. If we are even considering cost, sometimes 2 tablets thrice a day becomes a little difficult. A greater dose in the evening or night is preferred because craving is usually more at that time. Studies have shown that over 1.5 million patients with alcohol dependence have been treated with acamprosate. It's available in 28 countries, unlike naltrexone where availability is sometimes constrained. It modulates glutamate hyperactivity. Now, this is something which can be a cause of irritability and seizures in alcohol withdrawal. So, it's useful when you give it right at the withdrawal phase. And it acts on these glutamate receptors. Also, it's one of the few drugs in the long-term management of alcohol that are shown to have neuroprotective effects. It is known to increase BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, so neurons increase. It also prevents changes in beta endorphin. So in a way, it has an opioid action also. It also prevents increase in leptin. Leptin is a hormone which basically is known to act at the level of adipose tissue, but at the same time, it's known to have some role in alcohol dependence. It also acts at dopamine. Now, the fact that it acts on BDNF, glutamate, dopamine, leptin means it's multi-neurotransmitter in its approach. So it's a more preferred drug. No abuse potential and cost effective. Common side effect sometimes patients report is diarrhea. So you can treat it with normal antidiarrheals and it goes off. There are, in the last few years, some reports of a psychopharmacological rationale to combine naltrexone and acamprosate, because they say both act on diverse neurotransmitter systems. So you end up covering the entire neurotransmitter picture in the brain. And they found that the above combination is better than acamprosate alone. So there's a study done where they shown that naltrexone and acamprosate combined is better than acamprosate alone, though equal to naltrexone. They've not found it to be better than. And there are many studies using this combination which are underway, some of which will probably be reported by Jan 2014. Coming to our third drug, disulfiram. In fact, it's the oldest drug available in alcohol dependence, with an FDA approval way back in 1951, though it's not been used much after that. It started being used again in the 80s. It basically acts as a deterrent to alcohol ingestion and via the alcohol metabolism pathway. It has been used as a first-line treatment very often in patients who have failed courses of other treatments or who have not responded to other treatments.